Hello. This is about take 12. If I get through this entire video, um, you will understand the frustration on my face because I keep getting knocked off the internet. The weather outside is frightful right now, and I am trying to record a video for you guys so that you will have some information to hear about safety. And the content from our textbook that I'm going to try to discuss is Chapter 7 and 8. Chapter 7 is all about creating high-quality child care programs. And we have already discussed previously two different things from the Georgia Department of Early Care and Learning website. One of them is the rules for child care learning centers, which is the famous assignment 1 that you all had to do. That is our guide in the state of Georgia, and the rules for what is expected or what is required for a child care program. And it is a very thorough document. It is 110 pages. That counts the cover page. And I know that because I made copies. And I do have copies of it. So when we will be referring to it more as we discuss the content on safety. And we're going to go back and look at that document to see what it says more specifically about what the requirements are for indoor, outdoor, and emergencies and transportation, I think, are the more specifically what we're going to be looking at. But another thing that we looked at from that website is the JELTS, the Georgia Early Learning and Development Standards. There are 5 domains on the JELTS, and can you name those 5 domains? I can't right now because I don't have it to refer to, but I know one of them is physical and one of them is cognitive. Has to do with those 2 topics. The other 3, I know one of them is social and emotional, and anyway, I'm going to have to look at that again. But Chapter 7 does discuss at the very beginning that careful attention should be given to creating physical, cognitive, and psychological settings for children in order to provide high-quality child care. We also discussed something back when we talked about in, I think it was in our first 3 chapters of health, 2 factors that influence a child's growth and development. Do you remember what they are? It's discussed again in Chapter 7 at the very beginning of that chapter. Environment and heredity. Those are the 2 factors that influence a child's growth and development, and they are both interrelated. And that's something that the child is. It takes both to make up the child, the child, and of course us as well. Chapter 7 starts off dealing with content that what are the requirements for a child care center, as far as what's required of a center as far as getting started, things like obtaining a license, the regulations, the federal regulations, qualified teachers. What are the qualifications for teachers in the early child care setting? You all are planning on going a lot of different directions right now as far as your plans. What we talked about at the very first night, I remember some of you talked about wanting to teach kindergarten, 2nd grade. I remember Andrea specifically mentioned that she was interested in social work and being a social worker. I can't remember specifically, but what direction others have said. I'm going to have to refresh my memory by looking at those cards that you all filled out the first night, or the little name tags that you made. But anyway, if you want to know more specifically about what you need as far as what classes you need to take, which direction you want to go in the early childhood program. You can talk with me. There are some sheets there in the classroom and a file case there. It's over, of course, to the desk. That you can refer to. There's a lot of there's several different directions you can go. I personally, and I know I've told you a lot about my background, got a bachelor's degree, which is a 4-year degree. At the time, there weren't a lot of options, and that was many, many moons ago. There weren't a lot of options for a person at that time with an associate's degree. Now there are. There are more options for people as far as jobs for those of you that, get to the associate's degree level and choose to stop there. You can always continue on. You don't have to continue on immediately, but you can continue on. It just depends. My suggestion is that once you obtain your associate's degree, is go on and get out in the field and work, get some experience, decide if you really want to do this for the rest of. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, then as you're working, continue on with your education. If you want to work at kindergarten through and up, you would have to have a bachelor's degree. Some of the teachers below that now have to have a bachelor's degree, and I'd have to do a little bit of investigating to see exactly what the requirements would be for like a pre-K teacher or Head Start. As a paraprofessional, you could do that with an associate's degree. Anyway, I could go on, but if you all want to talk more about the qualifications for teachers, at what kinds of jobs you can do with, what types of education you've got to have, that's a discussion for later. You may also talk about that more with Ms. Smith, which is your advisor. And she's also our program director. So some of you have her as an instructor. Okay, moving on. Again, back to Chapter 7. Another thing that's talked about that we mentioned, you all hopefully will remember from the Assignment 1, the rules for Child Care Learning Centers. We talked about what the staffing ratios were for children at certain times of the day. I remember one of the questions had to do with nap time, how many adults per how many children, and there are rules about that. And there are guidelines, and that's what we discussed already when we looked at our rules for Child Care Learning Centers on the Georgia Decal site. But in our textbook, that information is covered in Chapter 7. And of course, we're looking at, we're thinking about this from the safety perspective. What is required as far as adult to child ratio? What's a safe, thinking about safety. Then it goes on, it talks about the curriculum, and again, our curriculum at that level, at birth through age 5, pre-K, would be GELDS. You all may have heard of DAP before, D-A-P, Developmentally Appropriate Practices. If you're taking 1101, you have heard of DAP. It is imperative that learning environments and enriching opportunities are provided, and that is something that I got straight out of the textbook right beside the words DAP, Developmentally Appropriate Practices. As we move on, the chapter talks about health services that are for children, talks about the policies and procedures that Child care centers need to maintain health and safety records. That's crucial. Personnel in a child care center need to be trained to administer first aid in emergency care, which is why you guys, that's a requirement for this course, is that you obtain your CPR certification in first aid, because as we want you to be ready to go out into the field, but you know, you are, once you do get into the early childhood ed field, you will be trained in that. So, but you guys already will be. Let's see, there is a place that talks about emergency contact forms, and we've talked about so many forms. Emergency contact information is very crucial as you are working with children, because you want to be able to have contact numbers or contact information for people to contact in case of an emergency. And the form is on page 178 in the textbook. Our child care centers need to be responsible for providing clean, safe, outdoor and indoor environments. They need to be responsible for developing emergency response plans. And I says, look at teacher checklist 7.1 for what you are supposed to do or be prepared for in case of an emergency. And I might have referred to the wrong number. There's so many tables and different things. Yes, it's a checklist on page 182 for what you should do to prepare for. Actually, we've got two things. We've got one for program security, a checklist that's 7-2, and 7-3 is how to conduct a fire drill. Those are things that you will be doing as a early child care teacher. What are some basic records that Georgia child care programs are required to maintain? Here's some examples of some basic records that programs can require. We would have to go back to our rules to find out more specifically what Georgia requires. Examples: children's health assessments, their attendance, emergency contact information, and again, that form is 7-1 in the textbook on page 178. Sorry, I'm looking back and forth. Like I said, I'm looking at my book and I'm looking at the notes. And I think I gave y'all the wrong page number, but it's in the notes right. No, I didn't. It's right. Page 178. Developmental profiles might be in the child's records. Staff health assessments, fire and storm drills, and there again I mentioned checklist 7-3. Injuries, like previous injuries, daily health checks, and that's not something that I've had to do as a Georgia educator, but not like they've described in the textbook. Okay, as we move on, there are some guidelines for safe environments discussed in Chapter 7. To start with, there's a checklist on, let's see, 7-4. It's a good one on page 185. Indoor and outdoor spaces. These are guidelines, safety guidelines. You all will be looking at these as we talk about our guidelines, and I do have an activity that we're going to do, hopefully, where you will be looking at the guidelines for the indoor and outdoor safety. Let's see. There's guidelines. Sorry, lost my place. Yeah, outdoor safety is a 7-5. It's just the next page. No, it's not. Sorry. I don't know if I wrote down. Oh, it's over on page 191. Like I said, y'all forgive me. I'm going back and forth looking at both things. There is the guidelines for outdoor play equipment. That's something that you definitely will be looking at as you prepare for the project for safety, which has to do with playground safety. I'm going to have to, well, I've got two more things to discuss, and I'll stop this video and go on to Chapter 8's content. We're going to be talking about transportation and how to safely, the proper way to to, and this sounds bad, to restrain a child in a child care, in a child car seat. And then the last thing in Chapter 7, in 196 and 197, I'm going through this really fast, and I apologize for that. I hope you guys will will read it carefully. 196 and 197, there's a blue box there, and it talks about the characteristics of a high-quality child care program. Please take a look. That's actually on 197. 196 talks more about transportation and what is the requirements for safely transporting children. Actually, that starts, guys, I'm sorry, starts on 193 and goes through 196. Also talks about how to safely wear a helmet. Your children that will be, I know at the preschool center that I worked at, they rode tricycles, but they had to wear a helmet on the tricycle. That was required. We could not put them on the tricycle without putting on a helmet. So there is a graphic on page 193, figure 7-3, about how to properly wear a helmet. I'm going to stop now and go on to Chapter 8 next.